The outpost on Kairos V, a rocky world on the edge of the Orion Spur, was meant to be a temporary assignment for Captain Elias Grant. As an expert in xenolinguistics, he had been sent to establish communications with the Caliph, a race of crystalline beings rumored to be more legend than fact. For months, Elias had worked tirelessly within the reinforced, domed human outpost, deciphering fragments of their language from artifacts left in the ruins scattered across the arid landscape. The Caliph were an enigma, said to communicate through vibrations that resonated within their crystalline forms, creating sounds akin to haunting melodies. But the more Elias worked, the less progress he seemed to make. That changed the day he met her. It happened during a sandstorm. The dome scanners picked up movement just beyond the perimeter, a faint, humanoid figure struggling against the winds. Elias had grabbed his breather mask and headed out, driven by curiosity and the slim hope of first contact. Through the amber haze of dust and swirling grit, the figure emerged. She was tall, her body seemingly sculpted from an iridescent material that refracted light into rainbows with every subtle motion. Her features were delicate yet alien. A smooth, crystalline face with eyes like twin galaxies, swirling and shifting with unimaginable depth. Elias hesitated. His heart raced, not with fear but with awe. "Hello," he managed, his voice crackling over the calm in his mask. The being tilted her head, a soft hum resonating from her chest. It wasn't words, not yet, but it was undeniably communication. He reached out a hand, slowly, cautiously, and to his surprise, she mirrored the gesture. When their hands met, a surge of warmth spread through him, despite her crystalline exterior. Over the weeks that followed, the being, whom Elias named Lyria, returned to the outpost. She communicated through a mixture of hums, gestures, and eventually a rudimentary shared language Elias painstakingly developed. Each interaction brought them closer, and what began as fascination grew into something far more profound. Lyria was intelligent, curious, and surprisingly gentle. She spoke of her people's history and melodies, revealing how the Caliph had once thrived on Kairos V before a catastrophic event had driven them underground. She was one of the last explorers of her kind, seeking knowledge and understanding of the world above. Elias found himself captivated not just by her stories, but by her presence. Her laugh, if it could be called that, was a shimmering series of tones that made his chest ache in ways he couldn't explain. Late nights spent beneath the planet's twin moons became their sanctuary, where they shared pieces of their respective worlds. But the unspoken reality of their differences loomed over them. Human and Caliph, flesh and crystal, ephemeral and eternal. Each moment together felt borrowed, precious yet precarious. And while neither said it aloud, the looming question of what happens next lingered like a shadow between them. One night, as they sat on a rocky outcropping overlooking the glowing mineral fields of Kairos V, Lyria turned to Elias. Her voice, more melodic than ever, carried a tone of sorrow. "Elias," she said, his name emerging from her in a near-perfect mimicry of his pronunciation. "Your people, my people, are not the same. Do you not feel it? The song of the stars pulls us apart." Elias shook his head, his voice strained. "I don't care about the differences. I care about you, Lyria." She reached out, her crystalline fingers brushing his cheek. "You are light in the dark, Elias. But light cannot stay in the shadows forever." As her words echoed between them, Elias felt the weight of inevitability settle on his shoulders. Whatever bond they had forged, the universe would soon conspire to test its strength. Chapter 2. The Rift. The following weeks were filled with a mixture of bittersweet joy and an undercurrent of growing tension. Elias and Lyria spent every moment they could together, but each day was tainted by the knowledge that their time was limited. The Human Council had taken notice of Lyria's presence through Elias's reports. What began as cautious approval turned into thinly veiled concern. A caliph, especially one with ties to the ancient ruins, represented an unprecedented opportunity for humanity's scientific and strategic endeavors. Captain Grant barked Admiral Marlowe during a holo-conference. Her severe face flickered with static as the transmission struggled to pierce Kairos V's volatile atmosphere. You are there to foster understanding, not entanglements. This relationship is compromising your mission. Elias clenched his fists under the table, keeping his voice steady. With respect, Admiral, this relationship is the foundation of that understanding. Without Lyria, we wouldn't even know how to approach the Caliph. Marlowe leaned forward, her gray eyes sharp. Be that as it may, Command believes the Caliph pose a potential threat. Their technology, their biology, it's all unknown. You're too close to the situation to see it clearly. Prepare to transfer Lyria into the custody of the research division. That's an order. Elias ended the call with a tight jaw and a pit in his stomach. He had seen this coming, but it didn't make the reality any easier to face. That evening, as the twin moons cast their pale light across the mineral plains, Elias met Lyria in their usual spot. He had avoided bringing her to the outpost ever since the council began pressuring him. "Something troubles you," she said, her voice carrying the soft cadence of concern. Her crystalline form shimmered faintly in the moonlight, a breathtaking sight Elias wished he could etch into his memory forever. "They want to take you," he admitted, his voice hoarse. "They think you're a threat. They don't see what I see. They'll study you, dissect your motives, your people's history. I can't let that happen." Lyria remained silent for a long moment, her gaze fixed on the horizon. When she finally spoke, her tone was mournful. "I feared this. Your kind, they're like fire, warm, yet consuming. I have felt the edges of their hunger through you. It is why we hid for so long." Elias stepped closer, his hands trembling. "But I'm not like them, Lyria. I see you for what you are. Not a resource, not an enemy, a miracle." She turned to him, her hand brushing against his cheek once more. The warmth of her touch was a comfort Elias had come to rely on. "You are different, Elias, and that is why this pains me. Your people will not stop. If they come for me, they will bring ruin upon themselves. I cannot allow it." Elias's stomach twisted. "What are you saying?" Lyria looked down, her gaze filled with sorrow. "I must leave. I have stayed too long, too close. The song of the stars is calling me home, deep beneath the surface where your kind cannot follow." "No," his voice broke. "No! There has to be another way. I can protect you, hide you. We cannot, Elias." She interrupted, her melodic tone firm yet tinged with regret. "Your fire will burn brighter than you can control, and I cannot stay to see it consume us both." The words shattered him, but before he could respond, the distant roar of a shuttle cut through the night air. Lights pierced the darkness, sweeping across the plains. "Captain Elias Grant," a voice blared from the comms. "Step away from the Caliph and prepare for retrieval." Elias turned to Lyria, desperation etched into every line of his face. "Run," he urged. "Get out of here." Lyria hesitated, her crystalline eyes searching his. "And you?" "I'll buy you time," he said, stepping back toward the approaching lights. Just go. She touched his shoulder one last time, a hum resonating between them like a shared heartbeat. Farewell, Elias. You have shown me a beauty I never knew existed. I will never forget you. With that, she turned and began to dissolve into the mineral fields, her body blending seamlessly with the glowing terrain. Elias faced the incoming shuttle, its searchlights blinding. As soldiers emerged, he raised his hands. "You're too late," he said, his voice calm despite the storm raging in his heart. But even as they restrained him, Elias's thoughts were not of his capture. They were with her, somewhere out there, lost to him but free. Chapter 3. The Distance Between Us. Elias's return to Earth was not the triumphant debriefing he had envisioned when he first set foot on Kairos V. Instead, he was confined to the sterile walls of a secure facility, interrogated relentlessly about his connection to Lyria and the Caliph. The Council viewed his actions as reckless, a betrayal of protocol. To Elias, their accusations were meaningless compared to the void left by her absence. "You withheld critical information," Admiral Marlowe snapped during one of their sessions, pacing the length of the room. "You failed to secure the Caliph, and now we're no closer to understanding their capabilities." Elias sat rigid, his fists clenched. "She's not a specimen, Admiral. She's a person." Marlowe scoffed. "Person or not, her people possess technology and knowledge that could give humanity an edge in the galaxy. You let sentiment cloud your judgment." "Maybe," Elias admitted, meeting her gaze. "But I won't apologize for it. If you'd seen her, spoken with her, you'd know why I did what I did. The Caliph don't need to be conquered. They need to be respected." The Admiral's expression hardened. "Respect doesn't win wars, Captain. Your actions have jeopardized our standing. You're grounded indefinitely." They dismissed him after that, stripping him of his title and confining him to a nondescript apartment in one of Earth's sprawling megacities. Surveillance was a constant reminder of his fall from grace, and the only solace he found was in his memories of Lyria. Elias spent months poring over his notes, revisiting every fragment of their shared language and the melodies she had taught him. He built a small, private lab in his apartment, studying ways to recreate the harmonic frequencies she used to communicate. If the Council wouldn't let him seek her out, he'd find another way to reach her. But as the years slipped by, doubt began to creep in. Was she still alive, hidden deep beneath Kairos V's surface? Did she think of him as often as he thought of her? Or had she moved on, her crystalline mind untouched by the weight of human longing? One night, as rain streaked the windows of his apartment, Elias sat staring at the holographic display of his notes. The room was dim, save for the faint glow of the screen. He strummed a set of tuning forks he had painstakingly calibrated, trying to replicate the tonal patterns Lyria once used to describe her world. The sound was hauntingly familiar but incomplete, like a half-remembered dream. Frustration boiled within him, and he slammed a hand down on the desk. "Damn it, Lyria," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Where are you?" As if in answer, the room's lights flickered. A low hum resonated through the air, faint but unmistakable. Elias froze, his breath catching in his throat. The hum grew louder, resolving into a series of harmonious tones. Her tones. Heart pounding, Elias scrambled to activate his equipment, tracing the origin of the signal. It wasn't coming from Earth. It wasn't coming from anywhere nearby. It was from Kairos V. The realization hit him like a shockwave. Somehow, against all odds, Lyria had reached out. He played the tones back, analyzing them with trembling hands. They formed a sequence he recognized, a call, an invitation. He barely slept that night. Formulating a plan to return to Kairos V officially, he was still under surveillance, his every movement monitored. But Elias had spent years preparing for this moment, and he wasn't going to let bureaucracy stop him. The next day, he slipped through the crowded city undetected, boarding a freighter bound for the outer colonies. From there, he bribed his way onto a smaller, unregistered ship heading toward the Orion Spur. Every jump brought him closer to her. By the time he landed on Kairos V, the planet's mineral field shimmered under the twin moons just as he remembered. But the outpost was abandoned, a relic of humanity's fleeting presence. He made his way through the ruins, following the harmonic signal that had guided him across the stars. As he approached a jagged fissure in the ground, the tones grew stronger. The hum resonated in his chest, pulling him forward. He descended carefully into the cavern, his flashlight casting eerie shadows across the crystalline walls. And then he saw her. Lyria stood in a vast chamber illuminated by the glow of her kind. Dozens, perhaps hundreds, of Caliph forms embedded in the walls, their light pulsing faintly like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. She turned as he entered, her iridescent body catching the light in a cascade of colors. "Elias," she said, his name a melody that sent shivers down his spine. He stepped forward, tears welling in his eyes. "Lyria, I heard you. I couldn't stay away." Her expression softened, though sadness lingered in her eyes. "You risked much to come here. Your people will not forgive this." "I don't care," he said, his voice firm. "I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try to find you." Lyria reached out, her hand meeting his. The hum of their connection filled the cavern, resonating with the dormant Caliph around them. "You are fire, Elias, burning and fleeting, yet you light my path." He smiled through his tears. "And you're my light in the dark." But even as they stood together, the cavern seemed to whisper of the challenges ahead. The Caliph slumbered, and the universe beyond still loomed with its unrelenting demands. Their reunion was bittersweet, fragile yet defiant, a spark against the vast, uncaring void. Chapter 4. The Choice. The cavern hummed with the energy of the Caliph, the faint pulses of light growing brighter, as if responding to Lyria and Elias's reunion. Standing amidst the crystalline giants, Elias felt both awed and uneasy. These weren't just dormant beings. They were Lyria's people, and their presence carried an unspoken power. "Why did you call me?" Elias asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I'd lost you forever." Lyria's iridescent eyes met his, swirling with sorrow and resolve. "You were never lost to me, Elias. But the time has come to decide. For both of us." He frowned, stepping closer. "Decide? What do you mean?" She gestured to the chamber around them, the glowing forms of her kin casting shifting rainbows across the walls. "My people are waking. The song of the stars grows louder. Soon, we must rise from the depths to reclaim the surface." Her voice lowered, her melodic tones heavy with regret. "But your kind will not allow it." Elias shook his head, his heart sinking. "You don't know that. I can convince them, show them there's nothing to fear." Lyria reached out, her fingers brushing his cheek in a gesture he had come to cherish. "You know your people as well as I know mine. They will see us as a threat, just as they saw me. And we cannot remain hidden forever." A knot tightened in Elias's chest. He wanted to deny her words, to argue that humanity could change. But deep down he knew the truth. The human council's hunger for control, their inability to see the Caliph as anything but a resource, would doom any hope of peace. "Then what are you saying?" he asked, his voice trembling. Lyria stepped back, her crystalline form glowing faintly. "There's a way for you to stay, Elias. To join us, but it is not without cost." His breath caught. "Stay? How?" She gestured toward a pedestal in the center of the chamber. A crystalline structure rested atop it, pulsating with light that seemed to sync with the rhythm of his heartbeat. "This is the Shard of Union. It is an ancient relic of my people, a bridge between the organic and the crystalline. It can transform you, binding your essence to ours." Elias stared at the shard, its light reflecting in his wide eyes. The implications hit him like a tidal wave. To stay with Lyria, to truly be with her, meant giving up his humanity. "And if I don't?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Lyria's gaze softened, filled with a sadness that mirrored his own. "Then you must leave, Elias. Return to your people and let us fade from your world. Our paths will never cross again." The weight of the choice bore down on him. To remain human meant abandoning her, leaving behind the one being who had shown him a love unlike anything he had ever known. But to join her world, to become something other than himself, was a leap into the unknown, a sacrifice he wasn't sure he could make. Minutes passed in silence as the chamber seemed to hold its breath. Finally, Elias stepped toward the shard. "I've spent my whole life chasing answers," he said, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions within him. "Studying languages, bridging gaps between species. But the truth is, none of it mattered until I met you." Lyria's crystalline form shimmered, her expression unreadable, but her eyes glistening with unshed emotion. "I don't know what this will mean," he continued, reaching out to touch the shard. Its surface was warm, vibrating softly under his fingers. "But I know I can't lose you again." Lyria moved closer, her hum harmonizing with the shard's resonance. "Elias, you are fire. To let you burn away would be the greatest loss I could bear. If this is your choice, then let us walk this path together." As his hand fully enveloped the shard, a surge of energy coursed through him. It wasn't pain, it was transformation. He felt his body changing, his senses expanding. Light, sound, and emotion became intertwined, a symphony of sensations beyond human comprehension. When it was over, he opened his eyes to find Lyria staring at him, her expression one of awe. He looked down at his hands, now semi-translucent and glowing faintly with an inner light. His form had changed, his flesh replaced by a crystalline structure that still retained a hint of his humanity. "You are beautiful," Lyria said, her voice trembling with joy. Elias smiled, a resonance in his chest mirroring hers. "So are you?" They stood together, hand in hand, their forms glowing brighter with each passing moment. Around them, the Kalis stirred, their light intensifying as they began to wake from their long slumber. Elias and Lyria would face the challenges ahead together, their bond transcending the boundaries of species, time, and space. Whatever lay beyond the cavern, whether conflict or peace, they were ready, for in each other, they had found the strength to defy the universe itself.